Hey horror TV fans, I am back, bored now, and on this video I'm going to be talking about episode 6 of season 1 of the Chucky TV show. The episode is called Cape Queer, and it's quite a genius reveal just why the episode is called that later on, with something that involves Devon and an idea he has when watching the 1991 remake of Cape Fear. So I'll get to that in a bit, but this is another really fun, really strong episode, and I don't know, if I had to pick, it might actually be my favourite of the season so far. And I think it's just a taste thing. Probably the reason is because we get a lot more Tiffany in this episode. She gets a fair amount of screen time, and I absolutely love Tiffany. I love Jennifer Tilly, and I love the scenes with her and Nico. Fiona Dorff really sparring off her really well. So I'll start with that stuff actually, because there's some great drama involving them in this episode, and Tiffany's on tremendous form. So what happens is there's a scene where they're trying to dispose of the body of the guy they killed in the previous episode, and there's lots of fun with obviously the fact that Chucky is inside Nico and is controlling her, and there's sort of this fun back and forth where Jennifer Tilly, Tiffany has stuffed the guy in a suitcase, and she's trying to get it shut, and a bit of it is sticking out, and Nico, or it's actually Chucky, just messing with her, teasing her, and she keeps saying "fuck you, Chucky," which is just great hearing her say that. And then later on, she kicks her / him in the leg, if you like, and this causes a reaction from Nico physically, where she actually snaps out of it and becomes Nico again. Blood sort of splurts in her face from the body. It's a really fun visual, and she becomes Nico again. And Jennifer Tilly, I keep calling her that, but Tiffany leaves the room and then comes back. And my favourite scene of the episode is when Nico tries to pretend that she's still Chucky, and she sort of tries to talk like Chucky would. She tries to say the sort of things Chucky might say to try and sweet talk Tiffany. And it's a brilliant scene because of the way Tiffany catches her out. And the way she does it is that she notices her eating in a different way, chewing her food in a different way than Charles Lee Ray would or Chucky would. And there's something brilliant about that detail, but also actually quite romantic, because she actually notices little details like that. And the other reason she notices is because when she kicked Nico in the leg, she said, well, if that was Chucky, then he would have screamed, he would have reacted, whereas you didn't. So that's kind of the other way, a telltale sign. So it's a brilliant scene, but I think they're also playing on this idea that there might be an attraction between Nico and Tiffany. Now it might be more on Tiffany's end, but she actually has this remark about, I think I like being with you more than him. But anyway, where the episode goes is that Tiffany starts talking about moving into a house with Nico, and obviously Nico, I think, doesn't want any part of it, but then she knocks her out from the blind side in any case, and she moves into this house, and it's a house in Hackensack, and it's a house where these murders took place all these years ago. And again, she's on good form in the scene because she gets off on like messing with the estate agent, like sort of saying that, yeah, pretending this is the house where my parents were killed, sort of thing. And it sort of freaks the estate agent out. And I absolutely love the line as the woman's driving away, where Tiffany's like, don't you want my autograph? It's just classic Tiffany. It's great stuff. And so she's kidnapped Nico again, knowing that it's Nico, not Chucky. And she's like tied her up in the garage and sort of left her there. So we'll obviously return to that, but that's really great stuff. Now we get further movie characters and further tie-ins to the movie here, because we actually see the return of Andy Barclay and of his step sister, played by Clarice Elise. And they sort of go all FBI agents in a way in this. Now, you've heard Andy over the phone, and he sort of, like at the end of last week, he mentioned to one of the characters about, have you checked the battery? And it's in the new Chucky doll where they realise there was no battery. But anyway, they arrive on the scene, and they're in the area, or at least nearby, and they're searching houses. And they knock on this one door, and their cover is then they're basically pretending to like run like a census, asking all these questions, and they start asking about, well, questions that would lead them to check if there's been any household incidents, like similar to what might happen if Chucky was in the house, or a good guy doll that was possessed by Chucky's spirit, let's say, and he might be on a killing spree in the house. And so what happens, and this is another really clever scene, is the sort of daughter of this couple, she actually brings in all her toys, and there's no good guy doll amongst them, but then she says, oh, and I forgot Charlie. And there's this long pause as they're waiting for her to bring the last toy in, and of course it does turn out to be a good guy doll. And there's this thing of him, as she's hugging the doll, and you get this shot, and the doll is revealed to be like possessed, and it's like, you made me do this, Andy. And then the sort of, I guess the shot that's been going around is of like Andy and his stepsister, like with guns, both shooting this good guy doll at once. It's a great visual. It's kind of badass. And I think one of them, I think it's her, she says sorry for any disturbance caused. Now I will say, and I'm not the only one to comment on this, but he isn't the best actor as he's grown up. I think he was obviously fine as a youngster, but I think the adult version, the adult of that actor hasn't like grown up to be the best actor. He's a little bit on the wooden side. She's much better. I think she's a lot more solid. But anyway, it's a pretty cool thing in the episode, and you also get sort of like classic footage of past Chucky movies, because we see them back in Child's Play 2 when they were first confronted with Chucky and first battling him. I think there's also, they use a clip from Cult of Chucky as well, and Andy's appearance, so that's really good nostalgic stuff as well, and it's a nice way to sort of tie the scenes together. But it keeps the plot bubbling along nicely, and it's a nice way to like get them both involved. And the last we see of them in the episode is that Lexi, Jake, and Devon have all decided to like contact Andy Barclay because they've heard about his story, about obviously the story of the original Child's Play film, and they've decided that they need his help. And they sort of talk to him at one point on the phone and kind of fill him in on the situation, and he says, well, we're on our way, we'll be there as soon as possible. And what I love about this, about what the episode sets up, is then you now have Tiffany with a kidnapped Nico based in Hackensack in a house, and you have Andy and his stepsister on the way to Hackensack. So you've got all these elements sort of converging type things. So it really sets things up, and I think the pacing of the season has been really good because, you know, we're approaching like the final part of it, so episode 7 next week, and it feels like they're sort of bringing this stuff together at just about the right time. But there is more. There's plenty happening in this episode. First of all, we find out that Junior's mother has cancer in this and is dying. And I wasn't sure quite where they were going with this, but we see her go off to a therapist, and Junior breaks up with Lexi in this episode, and that's because he goes to tell her, and she's obviously sympathetic, but then she still seems a bit distracted when he's talking to her because of what's been happening with like the Chucky and with Jake and Devon, and so Junior sort of gets in a strop with her and says, no, it's over, which is really harsh, even though you can understand it to a point, but they sort of break up. So I guess it's for a bit of drama with them, but then later on, Junior like is in the car with his mother, and they go to the therapist, and I think it definitely swerves you and makes you think that Junior could end up dead, because you sort of hear Chucky outside the car like laughing as his mother's gone up to see the therapist, but it's actually the opposite. It's actually his mother who's killed, like later on after she comes out of the therapist. It's sort of this very like cartoonish type death, because what happens is Chucky like sneaks up behind her and pushes like I think it's like one of those chairs on wheels. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't. It was like a sort of I don't know, like a tray type thing with boxes type. Yeah, it was that basically, and rolls it into her, and she goes flying off and sort of through the window. As I said, it's a bit over the top. I mean, it's not really credible. Then that would have had enough force or weight maybe to have done that, but maybe if it caught her off guard, I could just about buy it. But I think it's one of those where people who are like sort of like down on this idea of a killer doll might sort of look at that and say, yeah, look how silly that looked. But you know, it's a fun little kill nonetheless, even if it is maybe stretching credibility a bit. And I think another question I have is why did Chucky go after her, or did he follow her? You know, it just seems a bit of a random kill, but I think the whole thinking is that it's all again tied into like Jake, and because she has cancer, I think it's just used as, they just dismiss it as suicide, like saying things gone on top of her, and that's it, that's a kill, and obviously Junior sort of sells it. I guess it's one of those, I think they do have to come up with more victims, even though this seems a bit out of nowhere and seems a bit rushed. But there's actually 2 victims in this episode, and the second one I actually called, although I didn't guess then it was going to be this episode. I just thought, yeah, I thought she might get killed as well, because it's one of those where quite often if you have characters sort of bonding and kind of, putting aside their differences and saying, okay, we'll make these plans in the future, then sometimes that means they're going to get killed. And I'm talking about Devon's mother, because there's a scene where she apologises to Devon about how she was wrong about Jake, about how she dismissed him, and I think Devon pretty much, if she didn't know already, sort of comes out and sort of tells her about kind of how he feels about Jake, and she says, well, I really miss our movie nights, we should do that, and next time we have one you should invite Jake. And it's obviously a really nice scene, but I think because I'd heard and there was a couple of deaths in this episode, I sort of maybe guessed it. She was not long for this world because of them having this nice little mother-son moment when she goes out. And it's at this point then they work the whole Cape Fear angle into the episode, which is, again, really well done, because Devon is watching the Martin Scorsese remake of Cape Fear, and he's watching a bit before his mum comes in, and then when she leaves again, he starts watching it again, and where this basically leads is then he gets an idea of how they can catch the good guy doll, the other Chucky doll, and it's this thing about having a sensor or an alarm planted, and just similar to what they have in the film. So they sort of bug up this doll in the house, and it's got motion sensors, and they use that to try and alert them where Chucky is in the house. And I'll just keep saying Chucky, even though it is in essence Chucky, and Devon has this sort of controller type thing where he can then scan where exactly Chucky is. So it's obviously the three teens. It's Lexi, Devon, and Jake, and Lexi is waiting upstairs, and they're together. And yeah, at some point Chucky, they sense it sort of sets off the alarm, so they know he's in the house anyway, and this is quite a suspenseful little sort of classic type scene. And there's this whole thing where he sneaks into it's Jake's room, but where Lexi is, and shuts the door behind her, turns the lights off. So it's a pretty cool horror type scene, and he's sort of got a knife and says, "I got you now, but there's one condition. I'll let you go on one condition, and that's if you kill Jake." And this again goes back to previous episodes where Chucky is trying to play on the animosity between Jake and Lexi, or the animosity they had at the start of the series anyway. And it's a clever little scene, but it's also smart because it shows how far Lexi has come as a character, because she sort of tricks Chucky, or at least tries to, by playing along, and she distracts him. She sees that Jake's coming up behind him, and so she pretends to go along with this and says, "Yeah, sure, I'll kill him," and then starts describing how she'll kill him. And Chucky doesn't actually fall for this. He suspects that she's tricking him and that Jake's coming up behind him, but he turns around, and then Lexi goes for him, and she actually misses, and whacks Jake in the knee, and Chucky escapes. And this whole scene is really fun because it's sort of Chucky sneaking about, sort of outsmarting them. He cackles at one point, but yeah, he runs into the hallway, and Devon's actually waiting for him, and Devon, gets some shots in, but doesn't quite kill him. Chucky runs off. And it's at this point where Devon's mum comes in the house, and yeah, Chucky kills her. I mean, it's not that much of a death, but he jumps on her, overpowers her, and sort of just, she loses her balance and she falls down the stairs, and that's it. She's dead. That's the end of the episode. So I think out of the two deaths, I preferred that one just for the impact it has, because I think we're more invested in, obviously, Devon than we are Junior. And I think it was just the setup for that death was better. The setup for the first death wasn't that good, and it just felt a bit random because we only found out in this episode that she had cancer, and then suddenly she's dead a few minutes later. So I could see how it plays into the storyline, but I think the story was better leading up to Devon's mother's death, and just because you're invested more in Devon, I think it meant more. So that was good. That was effective. And the only other plot, speaking of Devon's mother, is that she arrests Rachel, the chemistry teacher, at the start of the episode, and that's because Rachel has been framed for the murder of the principal last week, at the end of last week. That's how it was revealed. And this other Chucky doll, this other good guy doll, was alive, and she's been framed, Rachel, and sort of the odds stacked against her, because apparently she was in line to be principal, so that's sort of a motivation. Her fingerprints are all over the office, and also apparently she has a dodgy juvie record. So I guess there's enough to at least arrest her and question her, and you see that in the episode. And obviously we know Rachel didn't have anything to do with it, and Devon tries to stand up for her as well, which I guess causes a bit of friction with him and his mum. So it's actually a really nicely told story across the episode, building to the end, where you sort of have Devon and his mum a bit at loggerheads at the start, and then sort of nearer the end they sort of come back together and they make up and they're in a good place, and then that sort of sets up the ending when she's actually killed. So it's sort of Devon's episode in many ways, because of him watching Cape Fear and getting this idea for them to try and get Chucky. So really good episode for Devon, and we got some classic Jennifer Tilly as Tiffany. So yeah, really enjoyed this episode. I probably have one or two small complaints which I mentioned, but no, it still didn't ruin my enjoyment of the episode. So we're really amping up the story now and the drama as we head into the final few episodes. So that's episode 6 of Chucky. I will be back very soon with episode 7, but let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, share me out on social media, and ding the bell on YouTube for more notifications. And also I will say I've just started a Patreon account where you can get exclusive content for just £1 a month, or $1 I guess if you're in the US, and the address for that is patreon.com bored now. That's patreon.com bored now, and I've already posted my first video for patrons there, and that is a review of the pilot of the TV show The Crossing from a few years ago. So I give my thoughts on the pilot episode of that, and you can expect more pilot reviews, film commentaries, and many more at Patreon. So if you want to support the channel for, as I said, just £1 a month, then you can do so there. But thanks for listening. See you next time.